So it's supposed to prompt me, right, Rob?
We're
Yeah,
live.
you're good to go, Danny.
Oh, there we go. Hey, how you doing there, fire engineering world? This is Dan DeGrace and Rob Fisher. I'm in Chicago, Illinois on this Wednesday afternoon for Humpday Hangout, and I have the pleasure to have several of the executive board members from F.O.O.L.S International to have a discussion about F.O.O.L.S International, F.O.O.L.S chapters, and what they're doing in regards to behavioral health. Right, Rob? Hope that this finds you well, and hopefully you'll enjoy this next hour of conversation with our, I won't introduce them, I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm actually going to turn it over to my co-host, Rob Fisher, to do his magic.
Do my magic. Yeah, I want to thank you, Dan. Most of you, if you were following the Facebook and social media, you probably saw that we had a symposium. Rosecrans had a symposium over the last couple of days. So Danny and I were actually hanging out together the last few days and sharing experiences, learning. It was a great time. We both hurried home last night to be in our hometowns. I'm in Seattle, Washington area, just about 30 miles north of Seattle. I'm actually at work. I got coverage for the next hour or so, but yeah, I'm the co-host with Danny here on Straight Talk, but I'm also the education and training trustee for F.O.O.L.S International. I've been a long time F.O.O.L.S member since 2001, and my chapter is out of the Seattle area called the Puget Sound F.O.O.L.S. I wish Richie was on because then he would want to bastardize the name like he always does. But I've been, like I said, I've been with that chapter since 2001. I've been many different positions on it. I'm currently holding the position of training trustee with Puget Sound F.O.O.L.S as well as the International. I think the next one we'll just move on to Chris in Chicago. Yes, you're looking at a nice furry beard like a bear there, but I'll let Chris introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Chris Bednarik. I'm currently the treasurer for F.O.O.L.S International, with my term coming up here this month, actually. So if you're interested in doing what I do, feel free to drop me a line and I'll explain to you the wonders of being the F.O.O.L.S treasurer. I am recently retired from the Chicago Heights Fire Department. I retired in April to accept a full-time position with the Illinois State Fire Marshal's Office, where I work with folks working with our state certification programs in the fire departments throughout the state. So I've been a Southside F.O.O.L.S member, Southside Chicago, since 2004, and I run our social media for the chapter. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Chris. And we'll go next to our secretary, Ben Flegel. If you've followed F.O.O.L.S International on Block Talk Radio, Fire Engineering Block Talk Radio, Ben and I have had a number of opportunities to share the air and talk about leadership. We've had some of our best podcasts have been together talking about leadership. And Ben's in another part of the country, like probably as close as we're going to get to the North Pole.
Well, actually, we're closer to Russia, too. Yeah, I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska. I live in a little suburb known as North Pole, and I'm with the University Fire Department. I've been with the University Fire Department since 2001, right after 9/11, and I was the president of Far North F.O.O.L.S for about 10 years, and then I turned it over and thought I would take a break when you sucked me into the international board and convinced me to apply. And I've been secretary ever since 2015, I believe. And yeah, that's my history pretty much.
Thanks, Ben. The other one that we have on with us today is on the other end of the country. So as you're probably seeing here, that the F.O.O.L.S Eboard spans across all of our nation. Our Vice President, Bob F.O.O.S. I'll let Bob go ahead.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Bob F.O.O.S. Like Robbie was saying, sorry. I live in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Work for Montgomery County Fire Rescue as a lieutenant. Started out in the F.O.O.L.S as the president of the F.O.O.L.S of the Central Maryland F.O.O.L.S. Now I'm currently the vice president of Central Maryland, but also, as Robbie alluded to, the vice president of the International. I'm currently working on getting ready to take my promotional exam for the captain's test. So took some time out today to get away from the books and talk to everybody.
Thanks, Bob. And as we've been talking before we got on, we wish you all the best of luck on your promotional testing over the
Thanks.
next few days. The other members of our board that are not on with us today, Rob Mitchell, who's our webmaster, takes care of all of our social media stuff. He's from the Alamo Fools down in San Antonio, where we had the Rosecrans Symposium just the last couple days. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it when we start talking about how the Fools kind of interact with all of this. And our president, Richie Stack, who is a lieutenant with the Chicago Fire Department and is part of the South Side Fools in that area. The only other person we were hoping were going to check in with us is um, uh, John Bart Simpson. So, Bart, most of you that have been around fire engineering, been to FDIC, I'm sure you know Bart. He's one of the founders, and we'll kind of talk a little bit here in a few moments about how the Fools got together, and I'll kind of explain a little bit how Bart's role is. But Bart is usually on these shows with us, and he's from the Florida area. And God, I don't even know what chapter he's with. If anybody else does know. All right, I'll leave that. Nobody's unmuting their mic. So, you know what? We're just going to start things off with, who are the Fools and how did we get our start? So I'll turn that over to Bob and let kind of Bob, if you don't mind, explain a little bit about that. Thanks, Bob.
Sure, no problem, Robbie. So overall, guys, the Fools started out as just a group of guys in Central Florida getting together, hanging out in 1995. Just again, a bunch of guys who were interested in the training and the brotherhood and the camaraderie and stuff like that. That was inherently a huge part of the fire service at the time. So these guys that got together and they would get together and to meetings and training, and obviously hang out at local watering holes. But as things progressed, the whole concept of the Fools and the International actually took off. We're at a point now where we're up to over 7,000 members of the organization. So talking with a lot of these guys, and we were fortunate to see a number of them at the last convention. A number of those guys had no idea what to expect and no idea that it would ever take off like it did. Um, and with that being said, I think a lot of the reason that we're where we are today, both involved with Rosecrans and mental health wellness and stuff like that, and as an organization, is really expressed in our mission statement. And our mission statement reads as follows, and I'll read it to you. The Fools exemplifies the true meaning of brotherhood by providing training opportunities to brother and sister firefighters worldwide. We organize benefits to assist not only firefighter and families in their need, but also the communities as well. The Fools exists to strengthen the brotherhood of our chosen profession and fuel the flame of passion we have for our calling. So again, that alone really, Robbie, I think puts us in that light of where we're at today and why we're here with Dan and you discussing this.
Excellent. Thanks, Bob. So, part of what we wanted to do, what Danny and I had talked about as we were preparing for the show and while we were together at the Rosecrans Symposium the last few days was, our relationship with Rosecrans or St. Florian program, and I should say our relationship as in the internationals, the Fools Internationals relationship. So before we get into that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Danny and kind of let him explain the St. Florian program and how it ties to Rosecrans, and then we'll get into how we got into that.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks everybody, honestly, for taking your time to come here and talk about this. It's a simple question, but it's a large answer. Anybody that knows me, that I've been in behavioral health since 1986, and if you count the fact that I grew up in an alcoholic family, it's been since I've been a kid, and so I've always found myself doing something, helping other people, and everybody kind of knows that Chicago has experienced a lot of suicides, and I think as we'd open this discussion about behavioral mental wellness, that unfortunately we find out many other departments have experienced suicides as well. We just didn't really talk about that. My mission forever, and more of late in the last probably 6 years is to open up that discussion and create connections and relationships so we can help the members and their families. And that's what's so cool about your mission statement. I can remember like it was yesterday as you started reading that mission statement, and I read it, and I'm like, where is the behavioral health in that? I hope it's there, but if it's not, let me have a conversation with then and still now Richie Stack, the president, and whoever else I can, and get in front of them and see if that matters, or if we're even looking at that. It's kind of like us in a fire service as incident commanders or officers or anybody. Is are we watching out? Do we have situation awareness, and are we watching out for the unknowns? Do we know the unknowns? When I struggled with treatment centers and addressing substance abuse and mental health for firefighters specifically, I managed 8,000 active and retired members for the Chicago Fire Department and the union for 14 years. And I had to find resources. I had to find people that understood us and it would provide us access, quick access, financially reasonable services, people that understood us and would get us righted again. And there weren't a ton. There were a couple at the time back in 2014. I struggled with that. I'm like, but who really cares about firefighters? Everybody talks about, hey, we're heroes and that. And I'm like, hey, stick that heroes out the window. You know where else they stick it to. No, but we don't like that thing. We get paid to do a job, or volunteers, God bless them, that don't get paid to do the job. I don't know how they do that. I mean, I love my job, but I'm not going to work unless, and that's partly a union thing. That's a whole other thing. And now I sound like Bobby because I'm talking about a variety of different stuff. But I'm like, honestly, I had to talk to organizations, and a lot of them, I'm like, what about firefighters? And no disrespect to other first responders and military personnel, but I know firefighters. I've been in the fire service for 30 years. My dad was a cop, and I heard a lot of stories, but I wasn't a cop. So thank goodness to Phil Eaton, the CEO of Rosecrans, when I sat down and I said, we're dying. We're not getting just hurt. We're not just losing our jobs, but we're dying. I mean, what the hell? And he goes, what can we do? And that's really in 2013, we had a discussion about what I thought would be the idea of how we can help people at their worst point. And I'll talk about that in a second, but fast forward, that's at the end. I mean, that's after things have happened, mitigating a bad situation already. And you talked about the Rosecrans Florian program back in 2014, after we started the program in May. It's like, well, how do we address it prior to it? How do we train, and how do we get our mission so that we prevent that crisis? But you got to do something first. You got to have somebody to buy in. Anybody that started a peer support team knows that you have to have somebody of a chief and a champion. If you don't have those two people, might as well not start a program. We started a flooring program in May of 2014. There were certain components that had to be part of it. Number one, it had to be somebody that came from the fire service, just like us. When I sit down with you and your board, or have a conversation with you, and all I got to do is look in your eyes, and I know you get it. Tell a couple stories, and I get a couple of stories, and we sit there and we shake our heads, and we're like, yep, been there, done that, good, bad, and indifferent. But kind of like the title for my presentation at our recent symposium, Resilience and Resolve. We don't have to talk about all the negative things, but how did we get through it? Well, how do we get through treatment if we don't connect with the people that are there? They could be the smartest people in the world, but if we don't connect with them, then you might as well just say, hey, how many trainings have you been in? And you're looking at the instructor going, oh boy, all right, I'm going to try to get the most I could get out of that, but if I'm not connecting with them. So we had to have somebody that came from the fire service. We had to have staff that also came from the first responder world, and not just people that worked in it, but their spouses or family members too, to give the other perspective, which we have. 50% of our staff work or are married to people that are in the first responder world. The third component, the chaplaincy. If you don't know Father Jim, then you haven't been watching our podcast, you haven't come to our symposium, or you don't get out of your house. Father Jim is I'm not gonna say so whatever. He's a character. I'll think of I'll try to pronounce it later. Anyhow.
I think Ben will probably be able to pronounce it for you. Plus, I forgot to mention that Father Jim is our F.O.O.L.S International chaplain. So
Yeah.
we didn't mention that. But go ahead, continue on with Father Jim.
So 33 years as a chaplain, but he is the son of a volunteer firefighter. He gets it. We also have Chaplain CC, Chris Jones, 8 or 9 years as in the Army, and has been a chaplain for 20-something years. So those are the three components, okay? The fourth component really is you, all of you. Anybody that's watching, listening, whatever you're doing, that believes that we need somebody like ourselves to sit down and connect with, to start that conversation. And that's what we're talking about from the beginning, is about peer support. We bring in men and women from all different careers and first responder and military, and they sit and share their stories. All you got to do is sit there again for a couple minutes and be like, okay, I know why that person's there. They're not doing it for any money. We're not paying them. They drive anywhere from half hour to 2.5 hours to come in there, share their story, give the people that are there in their toughest times hope, and build them up and let them know that they can have a long career despite where they're at this point in their life. The fifth and sixth component is probably programmatic. We work with evidence-based treatment approaches, and we use a lot of different experiential type therapies, because it's just like going in a restaurant. You guys don't eat, you eat the same stuff as I do, but you don't eat the same stuff every single day. You want what you want that given day, and we never know for sure what somebody's going to respond to. So we use certain modalities to spark a conversation. And with that, we also look at their sleep and their health. You know, everybody talks about universal wellness and what that, or holistic approach. But what does that really look like? 10 years ago, we never talked about sleep because we busted through it. Anybody that said, yeah, I didn't have a good night's sleep last night would be like, and so? But anybody that we know in the fire service has sleep interruption. You go into sleeping quarters, right? And probably 25 to 50% of the people have a CPAP machine, because we have something that goes awry in our career. I have a sleep machine because I was waking up 12 to 15 times an hour. That's not good. That's not healthy. I still wake up 3 times a night or 4 times a night that I know of, and hope that gets better. So we look at that, because if you don't get a sleep, you're not recovering, and if you're not recovering, you can't take in the information. You can't be 100%. And then we have all the people that have injuries. And do treatment centers address their injuries? Do we address how they manage those injuries from a medication standpoint, and what that medication is doing to them? So we look at pain medication, and we try to get them on a daily regimen of getting back into working out. And we've had people that used to run marathons that couldn't run 3 blocks. And by the end of the time that they've been in just 30-day program, they've run 3 to 5 miles on a treadmill, which is absolutely unbelievable. So that's kind of what the Florian program is all about. And we've treated 370 first responders since May of 2014. And as I said recently at the symposium, is that I just don't think about those individuals. And as you guys say in regard to your mission, I think about the spouses and the children that are around them, or their parents, and seeing that person for the successes they have rather than their weaknesses.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I just to kind of summarize it all, I mean, I look at it as the St. Florian program is a program focused on first responders, military personnel, because you understand the needs, the the issues that are plagued by us or that we are plagued with, and that you focus your treatments and everything around that. And it would be no different than, like when we talk about peer support, and why is peer support good in the fire service, is that it's kind of taken us back to the 50s and 60s. And this was a conversation I had with another individual when we were at Rosecrans or at the symposium, is that actually it was with Father Jim, is that our society has changed such that we no longer are a group mentality, the tribe mentality, and we do things individually, and we've kind of disconnected with one another. And peer support is just kind of like a program that's pulling everybody back together, because when we all sit down and we know what's going on, we understand each other, it really does help. And that's what I see the St. Florian program doing, is that by having people that understand us, they're just not somebody just looking at us for, well, you're just any other individual. They understand that we have different needs, we have different lifestyle. Like as you said, sleep is an issue in the fire service, and that they base our treatment or base whatever we need to do around that. Would that be right then?
No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and in regards to our relationship between me and Fools International, and I'm a proud Southside Fools member. I'm actually embarrassed to a little degree at the fact that I wasn't aware of the Southside Fools or Fools International. Um, to be honest, I'll put it on both of us. It's about awareness and getting the word out, and it's also about me taking the initiative to find out what resources are out there. I'll make it up by saying that I'll, yeah, I'll not make up like a lie, but I'll make it up by saying that when, just like Bart and the other executive board or the founding members had an idea and came together and didn't know, all they wanted to do was bring people together of common interest. They didn't know where it was going to go. That was their goal. That was the same thing that we had to do in regards to the Florian program, whether or not it would be sustainable or people would buy in. So going back to 2014, I put out an email to a variety of different people to bring together some solid people across the country to discuss specific treatment for fire and EMS. And one of those persons that I sent an email to was to Richie Stack. And I looked at Fools International website. I'm reading the mission statement. I'm learning about, you're about training and education. I'm dying to see something in there about behavioral health, which I didn't see. And then I see Richie Stack, and I'm like, where the hell is Richie Stack from? And I'm like, oh shit, he's from the south side of Chicago. And I go, okay, good, great, a South Sider, and I'm going to call him about behavioral health. How do you think that's going to be received? So I sent him an email and I said, hoping that I'd get a response, and said, listen, I'm going to have a professionals day with about 35 people from across the country. I'd like to invite you to a conversation. And lo and behold, he actually responded and worked out where he came to 2 days where I had people from Boston to New York, from Madison, Wisconsin, from Indiana, from Michigan, and here from Illinois. We had a discussion, and I can remember it like it was yesterday, because I know you're going to ask me this question, and might as well just say, where did the bond come from between me and him? And everybody saw on Facebook, right, where he grabbed one of my parts. It wasn't a frontal part, it was the rear part, but anyhow, so we could be real on the show, I think. And I had everybody that was there from all these different organizations go into the front and say, number one, tell me why you're here, and number two, tell me what you're all about, and number three, let's talk about a relationship if we can make that happen. So of course Richie gets up there, and his response is, I'm not exactly sure why I'm here. And he looks at me straight in the face and he's like, Dan, tell me why I'm here. And I'm sitting in the back. I wasn't expecting that, but I've come to, and I think we've come to know that he's a straight talker. I think you've come to know that I'm a straight talker too. And I said, I want to throw right back at him and say, well, why are you here? Are you here for the free meal and the shrimp? I didn't go there, and I'm not going there. He was intrigued, but I said, I read your mission statement. I learned about the F.O.O.L.S from the website and from Bobby Halton, who shared about it. I've been at FDIC. I went to the party, and I wanted to know if there was a way that we could connect so that we could build on that mission of training and education and helping out the family, but specifically in regards to behavioral health. And that kind of started the conversation. And I kind of told him about some of the stats and some of the things that were going on in Chicago. And he honestly was a little bit surprised in regards to the number of suicides, the number of calls that we would get in the local 2's EAP, our Chicago firefighters EAP program, from 150 to 300 a year. Though, and he's like, that those many people are needing help. And I said, those and others. But the question is, do they buy into who we are? Will they call us? And that's how kind of our relationship kind of blossomed.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna flip this over to Ben because Richie's not here to give his side of it. I did hear what I heard you say, Dan, is that you called Richie a shrimp, which we all agree that Richie's a small little solid man. We can call him that. But I'll turn it over to Ben and get it from the perspective of us, or as the F.O.O.L.S, how this kind of went down and how our relationship fostered.
Well, I was aware that Rich had made contacts. He was kind of the one that led us in this direction. And talking with Dan, I know that we also went back up and toured the facility. I think after the Chicago convention, but it was at the Chicago convention in 2015 where we were first introduced to Dan, and Dan gave his own testimony, so to speak, about what he experienced and why behavioral health was really an issue. And I have to confess for myself, I was very skeptical. I think we all were to a degree, not about Dan, but about the idea of talking about behavioral health, um, simply because of who we are and how we've always dealt with it. And you got the folks that struggle, and you got the folks that don't, and how bad can it really be? And then I heard Dan speak, and that was the first time the hook really went in, and I realized I need to support Richie in this. And Richie threw it out there. Who's interested in taking this further? And I was among the first to raise my hand. And I know that Chris was right beside me. And I think we all, as a group, about the same time, began to see that this was at least important to Richie. And if it was important to Richie, we need to hear it out. And then, Richie's really good at manipulating us as a group with those gentle suggestions, making it seem like it's our idea. And then you find out later he's a little more involved in it. But then at the first symposium, sitting there, Bobby, and having Bobby connect with us and share his reluctance and get up and talk about it, and we were tied in there supporting him in getting up and giving that keynote, and then in the middle of the keynote to realize that we were all looking at ourselves as Bobby fully displayed the struggle that he has had, and there was not I think there was maybe 10% actual first responders in the room, and everybody else was clinicians and doctors, and I think we were the most uh, nervous in the room at that moment because it suddenly the symposium was about us, and it became really hard to deny that mental health is an issue as you realize, wow, that's the effect I'm having on my family. That's the struggle that goes on in my mind. He just described how I feel coming home after a morning on shift, and how I think I'm going to enjoy my family. I'm looking forward to seeing my kids. And then you walk in the door, and it just takes that one trigger, and there's just this massive explosion, and everybody's mad at dad, and everybody thinks dad's mad at them, and really it has nothing to do with that. It's many other things. And so at that point, I think all were hooked on the idea of really getting behind Dan and supporting anything he needed from us.
Yeah, I think
What
the other
else
thing
to
to
say
add to that,
on that one?
Ben, was we also did. You kind of broke there for a second, so I thought you were stopped talking, but um, you and I did a video on behavioral health, and I think I flew up there on it was January or February. It was like negative 100 degrees, and my
I took
hand
you to a
froze.
remote lake.
Yeah, my hand froze to the camera as we're trying to do this. But and we'll get that. You know what we need to do is we'll talk to Texas Rob and get that up on our page again. But we've all, I think I can speak for most of us. We've all faced issues of maybe being cantankerous, angry, irritable. We've all struggled. I don't. I mean, without a diagnosis or anything, I think we all struggle with issues of depression or of some type. Like we're just not on our groove. And I kind of look at how we got involved in this. This was like a perfect match for us. And I've learned a lot in this time period that our affiliation with Rosecrans and with Danny and I mean I've gone on now. I'm a coordinator for our peer support team in my department, and I know that more of them are popping up. But what about your experience, Ben? I mean, when we did the video, it had a personal touch to it, did it not?
Did well simultaneously with the 2015 getting to meet Dan, and then I think just before the Rosecrans Symposium that we first attended, I had an incident in my response area where we pulled a small out of the river. He had gotten swept away by the river, and the crew was heavily impacted by it, and I wasn't. Another call, didn't feel any sense uh, of grief or anguish other than it was sad. But watching my crew deal with it really realized that my sensitivity has shifted from victims that we respond to how am I reacting. And one in particular took a nosedive. And so by the time we had reached the Rosecrans Symposium, I was already aware that I had one crew member that was in real trouble. And yeah, so that's why it was very personal.
Yeah, one of the things that maybe Danny can pop in on this. This is kind of like just going off script, but one of the things that got brought up at the Rosecrans Symposium this last couple of days was I think it was Dr. Janke that mentioned it. Is about what is wrong with us when we're not feeling the grief that everybody else is feeling. Why are we? And I look at this is a prime example, Ben, that you weren't necessarily, you saw that it was a bad situation, but you weren't on the same level as everybody else with the how they were dealing with it or how it had impacted them. But you're seeing the impact of the crew, and that alone, I mean that I think Dr. Janke mentioned how it was that is a potential problem as well, where you don't feel like you're part of the crew anymore. You don't realize or you don't understand why has it not impacted me negatively. And I mean, Danny, you want to jump in a little bit on that and maybe explain?
Well, I mean, we're all different. We're firefighters and EMS personnel, but we're also different. Some get colder faster, some get hotter faster. Some guys sweat in their uniforms, some people don't. Um, we have biological, we have physiological, we have emotional and spiritual responses. We take in different things, and over time, as we chop wood, as we sweep the floor, as we mop, we build calluses. Um, we don't know if one cut's going to hurt us or 50 cuts, and we only know that after our experience. We're not superhuman, Sometimes we try to be, but we're fallible and we're human. What we're doing is in life in general, and just don't think about the job, but what we have to do not only in the counseling field, but we also have to do with a brother and a sisterhood, is understand where that person came from, what makes them resilient, what makes them to have resolve, or what doesn't. What makes Ben Flegel uh, good or bad in a sense of that he didn't have a response to that was because he had resolve in his life? Was it because he is at the point where he is numb, which is, I'll be honest with you, I'm not saying anything that Ben has. I'm just saying for a person, is he numb because of that is his go-to coping mechanism in the field that he's in, or from how he grew up, uh, or is that just a simple protective factor that he goes to so that he can manage his responsibilities? One of the things, and I don't teach leadership classes, but uh, as a battalion chief for Chicago and having 11 officers and 50 people that work for me, every single day, everybody comes up to me and says, "Hey, what do you got planned for today?" And I look at them, I go, "What the?" And I don't say fuck, but I said, "What do you got planned for today?" "Well, I want to have a good day." I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You're kidding me, right? You want to have a good day? Yeah, you just set yourself up for failure because we respond to everybody's worst fucking day. So what do you think's going to happen? Somebody's going to cut you off. Somebody's going to piss you off. You're not going to get access to that building. You're not going to get the right information. You're going to get misinformation. You're going to go through the wrong friggin' door. You're going to get the wrong address. You're going to have a difficulty with a lead out. Something's going to happen. And that's going to blow your fucking day. So you screwed up your day already. Expect something to go wrong. Hopefully, it's not going to be tragic. Anybody that you've ever talked that has had a suicide or a line of duty that said, or an active shooter said what? I didn't think it was going to happen to me. Are you freaking kidding me? Let's get past that. Let's prepare. Right? Preparation. What was it? I forget now. I don't have to take any tests. Ask Bob. What's the three things we have to do to plan for a drill? Right? Preparation. I forget prepare. Whatever. PPE or some crap like that. I lost my freaking. I sound like Bobby, right? I'm all over the place right now.
Yeah, Bobby's
So
not here, but you're doing a good job filling in for him.
So that's how we respond. But kind of like what you said, in the sense that we have depression, we all have symptomology. Get over it, right? Uh, we're going to have symptomology. We're going to have a response. But how long is that response going on, and who do we direct it to? My fault, and I think what Ben is saying too, I think we all could agree with it, is that we have a tendency to let it out in the wrong direction, and we don't let it out well. Let's make fun right now, right? We all have gas, right? Some of us want to make a lot of noise. Some of us want to sneak it out. Depends on who we're around. We have that gallows humor. We said it. If we said it to the general population, we'd all be in frickin' jail. If we say it in the cab, if we say it in the firehouse, that's okay. But how do we assimilate in life in general? Who are we? We're not just firefighters and EMS people, right? We're husbands, wives, sisters, brothers, sons, daughters. And how does that all work together? I don't know if I answered your question, but I went all over the place. Sorry, Rob.
No,
I'm supposed to
I love it because you did fill in for Bobby, and it's like I don't know where that road was going, but you know
Did
what
I get that? Are we?
we're good. Basically, what I'm trying to bring us back full circle was just the experience that not everybody has the same exposure or the same grief when we're on the same call, and that we all deal with it differently. And the problem is that some feel like you are not responding the same way as everybody else is, and that then it makes them feel bad for not having that. And I think you answered it with your gas analogy, which is that's a new one for me. I liked it. I liked your analogy. But yeah, I mean, I think it goes to saying that we deal with in our profession, we deal with a lot of issues that can have a significant impact. And Dr. Janke also mentioned about on PTSD, and she says the first question on it, and I wish I could quote her perfectly because she was hilarious. The first question is like having an exposure or traumatic injury. She's like, "Well, what the fuck? Of course you do. You're in the fire department, and um, yeah. So we're already predisposed just by being in our profession the way we are. That we are predisposed to um, getting into post-traumatic disorders or whatever it may be. I'll turn this over to Chris because we're talking about um, issues with behavioral health, and I'm curious, are we having issues in our membership with behavioral health, Chris, or you want to kind of talk on that?
Well, I don't get those kind of calls. I think Ben gets a lot of those calls. He's just that kind of guy. I get a lot of calls about, hey, can you tell me about how much my chapter owes so that we can stay active? Um, but I'm kind of looking at who we have here today, and collectively, we have over 100 years of fire service experience. Officers, firefighters, everything. So that's 100 years of calluses we've built up to just everything that we've seen. And I think that's part of what makes this program really work is when people do have a problem. And I'm a member of the peer support team here in Illinois. And when people reach out, they're not reaching out to some clinician that has no idea. They don't have to start from scratch. I've talked to some guys that they want to go, they have recognized that they have a problem and they want to go talk to somebody, and they just reach out to the family clinician or somebody that they found on the yellow pages. Actually, what does the yellow pages even exist anymore? I don't know. Google, whatever they happen to use. And yeah, I've talked to some of these guys, and they're sitting across from this therapist, and they can see in the therapist's eyes that they are freaking them out. And they're like, and now they start to hold back because they don't want to wig out this other person. And what good did that really do? Not a whole lot, because they're holding back the stuff they really need to get out. So being able to talk to folks like us, maybe we haven't been exactly on that call. Maybe we haven't seen exactly that thing, but we've been somewhere pretty close, and we can relate to whatever that issue is. And sleep deprivation is a big thing. My daughter's taking a psychology class right now, and she says, "Hey, Dad, I want you to know I participated in class today." I said, "Oh, that's nice. Did you get some extra points or something?" She says, "No." I says, "Oh, well, because she's usually kind of a wallflower." And she says, "Well, we were talking about sleep deprivation, so I decided to talk about you in the fire service." And I was like, "Well, I guess she's heard me talking about it long enough that it hit home." And and how many of the rest of our problems just stem from that, just not being able to relax? I know when I was on shift, I was a lieutenant in a fairly small house, but if my ambulance was out, I was awake. I was worried about them. When it was time, I generally turn into a pumpkin around 10 p.m., but I'd lay in bed tossing and turning until 11, 11:30, midnight, just because you never know. You can't turn yourself off. And then you do have those traumatic events, whether they're in your personal life or your fire station life, that compound on top of that, because that your filing cabinet's never able to just get all those things in the right order like they need to be. You know, you have family problems. We have a family member out of state that's pretty sick right now. And, my wife, we were sitting on the couch the other night, and she's telling me about it. And we're fixers. We're all those type A personalities. We're the people that they call when they have a problem for us to come fix it. So instead of, I don't know, maybe being as sympathetic as I should have been, the inevitable is coming. And I said, well, our daughter has a lot of classes. We can't really pull her out of school. Maybe you're going to have to fly down there on your own so that you can be there with your family and that sort of thing. And I'm after a little while, I was thinking, maybe that's not what my wife needed to hear. Maybe maybe she needed me to be more sympathetic to the family, to her feelings and what's going on, as opposed to me reverting back to, oh, well, I know how to fix this. We're going to make a plan. And our plan is going to involve me being able to stay home so that my daughter can go to school and I don't have to take any time off of work and all this kind of stuff. And that's, I think, where we fall a lot of times. So it's hard for us to recognize when we do have a problem, because we want to fix it. And then when we run into that problem that maybe we don't know how to fix, we don't want anybody else to know. we look at Paul Combs photos all the time, right? And there's the one with Superman fireman standing in front of his locker, and he's this kind of little scrawny guy, but his reflection's this big, huge, puffed up dude. And that's what everybody else sees, and that's what we want to portray. So when we can't portray that to ourselves, I think it puts us into kind of a bad spot, and then we start to flounder and we don't know where to go. So the Florian program, whatever peer support you have in your area, and other folks recognizing and being open to when someone says, "Hey, man, are you all right?" To be honest with them, because they're asking because they care.
Yeah, I think when we look at the problem in the Fools International, I mean not only individually, but Ben works for a smaller department up in Fairbanks and has dealt with it, and I've dealt with it here, and I've facilitated having a member from the Fools go to the St. Florian program. And so I guess, Bob, I'd ask you, I mean, you're in a huge department. Do you guys have behavioral health issues up in your department? And that includes your chapter as well.
So we do. We actually have an employee assistance program and a peer support program built in within our department that tends to do a pretty good job. A lot of that stuff, after the first symposium we did with Dan, I came back with tons of questions and was throwing questions at people. A lot of our clinicians are not providers or used to the lifestyle that we live as firefighters or our police officers, because they're all enrolled in that as well. Our EMTs are part of the fire department with us. So a lot of that stuff to me is, sitting down talking with these people. Well, I know how you feel. No, you really don't know how I feel. Nothing against or not to take away from these professionals, these clinicians, but having people, and they've done so, getting more people that with the training and experience in the fire service, like Dan was talking about, or related to fire service personnel, because it is a totally different lifestyle. There people deal with stress and everything like that across the board in any business, but I think what we see in the emergency services in the military is a lot different. Again, like you guys were talking about, they call us on their worst days. We're there to fix the bad of the bad, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with that. So the resources that we do have available, but also the networking, and reaching out and just being there for individuals, I think is a lot more, because we're on that same page. We're running the same calls. We've seen the same thing, the smells and the lack of sleep and the other issues and problems that we face, um, just across the board, is rising dramatically across the fire service. But I think the big thing is that stigma, Rob. When first calling the Mayday first came out, everybody was deathly afraid to call a Mayday because they were afraid of what their peers were going to say. I think a lot of it now is the same thing with us asking for help. What is that stigma? What are my peers going to think? What is everybody going to say about me, even behind my back? Oh man, this guy's a wimp, or whatever the words that they want to use. But the evidence is clear. There is a problem. We need to be able to reach out and look to one another and lean on one another when those problems come out.
Dan?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was just kind of add that we kind of need to be pointing this back to what you said, Dan, in that it's the programs in place um, are effective for the few that reach them. How can we prevent people from needing to go there? And I was just reminded of this the other day. Among our membership, we lost a community member. A local fire chief took his life, and that generated a lot of discussion. And I got some phone calls from a few guys, and they called me because I'd given a keynote about a year ago, and I was asked to speak about the brotherhood and sisterhood, the fraternity of the fire service, and I tied some of the things I've learned from Rosecrans into that conversation, and it generated a lot of honesty among people I've known for a very long time. And I began to realize there's a lot of guys suffering in our community that don't know how to verbalize it and don't know what to do about it. Um, and it happened again with this recent death. As people are saying, I think I'm broken, and so we need to be willing to um, look into how do we raise this level of awareness, while at the same time acknowledging what the doctor said that Rob quoted, that of course you have a problem, you're in the fire service. um, and in my own behavior as a company officer, I spend a lot of time generating conversation at the kitchen table to get the guys to vocalize this. When a firefighter tells me they're suffering guilt, or struggling with an event that took place, I kind of wonder, where is that atmosphere for them, especially with the volunteers who are not necessarily in the firehouse, like volunteers used to be. It used to be volunteers were never at home; they were always at the firehouse, whether there was a call or not, and that's not the case anymore. So um, I think there's a broken path to ventilate all this emotion and tension and stress. We have to rediscover that, and I'm hoping that the F.O.O.L.S can help with that. Certainly, we can be a conduit for information, the kind of information you've taught us to be thinking about through the Florian program. Um, I'd really like to see the F.O.O.L.S have a real concrete methodology as members begin to speak up, so that we know our regional help, and we know our national help sources that we can go to.
Well, let me first say that the greater majority of us are not broken. The greater majority of us on any given day do have a problem, and that is okay. That's fine. We have problems every day, and people bring us problems. And what do? We correct it. We fix it. We give them information. That's what we do. We're okay with that. We're good with that. With our cars, right? It rains out, sleets out, snows. We skid a little bit. That's a problem. All right. We go off the road. We're broken. We're trying to keep people off the cliff and going over that. We're not going to eliminate all problems. We don't do that on the fire ground. But we then have to have things in motion or things available to right the ship again. So a lot of metaphors, right? We've been doing that. We're all here right now having a discussion. We should have been having this discussion 20 years ago. 25 years ago, we were talking about RIT. And 25 years ago, most of the chiefs were saying, fuck no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put a whole company out in front and not utilize it. Are you kidding me? Now it's a standard. When will it be a standard across the nation, not only in fire, but EMS and police? And we had CISM, but that was after the fact. How do we have boots on the ground, training and education, which is your mission, not only just for the individual, but for the families? How do we do that? How do we do that? So a little bit at a time. You guys know, and I'll be honest with you. Come on. I said that in regards to bringing Richie out to Rockford. For me to get in front of, I don't care what department I am, what type of experience I have, but one man to another man or one man to a woman, to get in front of somebody and to share, uh, uh, something that isn't always received well or pushed away, right? Behavioral health, mental wellness, suicide, that type of stuff. Um, I know I'm not always invited into everybody because you're like, oh shit, Dan's going to talk about that. Man, I want to talk about chicks and gambling and fun and cars and all that stuff. But God damn it, man, if we don't take care of our own, then what are we doing? What are we doing? You guys have how many chapters?
We've got 170 chapters plus 3 on the way.
7,000 members. So I look at me, we had 97 firehouses in the city of Chicago, 3 shifts, 5,000 active and 8,000 with retirees. I sat there and I'm like, we had 4 of our members die of suicide in 5 months. I was out of my mind. I'm like, that is not okay. What were they doing 5 minutes before they died by suicide? And why didn't they reach out? Did they not know about the resources available? Did I not touch their lives, or somebody touched their lives prior to that, where they felt that they can reach out and call and say, listen, I'm at my worst. I need to talk to somebody. And hence, that's why I'm so adamant, not about the Florian program. I'm adamant about peer support. I'm adamant about talking to Rob and having this, and Bobby gave us the vehicle here to talk about behavioral health and fire engineering, which has always been about firefighting and hose lead outs and smoke and brimstone and all that stuff. And well, hey, what about our number one asset in the fire service? You, all of you that are here and are listening, and then those of you, lieutenants, captains, chiefs, and fire chiefs that are supposed to be the leaders and say, what are we supposed to be addressing now? What are we supposed to be addressing in 5 years? How do we look forward to 10 years and make sure that we're not in the same goddamn boat as we are now? We got to model it. You guys know what I've said before. Modeling it, and that makes us a little bit vulnerable, and that's not really comfortable. Well, get out of your goddamn comfort zone. I'm not, so get a little passionate, because honestly, when I say that, I got a lot of buddies, unfortunately, that died by suicide. I had a dad that was suicidal 3 times, and my initial response when he told me he had a gun to his head, I was fucking pissed and scared and didn't exactly know what to do. No one should be in that situation. And shame on us if we don't do something to make sure that that doesn't happen to any of our members. So I can't thank you guys enough. And I think about the 7,000 members of your organization. Does everybody know about what your mission is and who wants to be a part of it? Ryan Birdman Parrott, right, closed up our symposium. Navy SEAL, the best of the best. Was he broken at one point? No. Was he down? Absolutely. Did he lose already 6 or 7 members of his SEAL team, of SEAL Team 7? Yeah. Yes. Does he want to lose another member? Absolutely not. What does he do? Goes out and speaks and tries to bring awareness to this. He also does other things. Also a dad, a mentor, a husband. We can do all that, but we need to do it as a group. And that's why it's so cool. Thinking back to when Richie came to that first meeting, I met you guys. You guys came as a group. I know it took a lot, both personally, time, money, to come out to Chicago and sit there. But I don't know if I give you any inspiration, but when I saw and I look at you guys in your F.O.O.L.S shirts, which are really cool, by the way, that is cool. But what I also think about is, does everybody have that feeling of being together within the F.O.O.L.S organizations, the chapters, the million plus, probably almost 2 million active and retired firefighters across the nation? How do we touch them all, and how do we touch the spouses? And that's why we got a partner. That's why we did.
Yeah, kind of wrapping this thing up because we're right at our hour mark, but to kind of echo what you're saying, Danny, about the getting out there, and what everybody has said through this entire conversation is that one, if your organization, and I'm talking to the F.O.O.L.S and people who are not even F.O.O.L.S, if your organization doesn't have a peer support team, or you're not participating in a regional team, or in some cases like Florida and North Carolina that have state teams, if you're not doing that, then you're missing out on an opportunity to really help that awareness side of things. If we can get to helping people understand, and we've got a chat board going on here, and as conversations going on, we can kind of communicate with each other. And Chris said it's okay not to be okay, and we talk about that all the time. And um and, but just getting the training out there to get the awareness out there. I love our relationship that we have with Rosecrans. Our team didn't start up because, well, I mean, I should say our team started up because of what I learned at Rosecrans, and being connected with others that had peer support teams. One of the biggest ones being, or one of the, one that's it's kind of modeled after, is out of Illinois, sorry. And yeah, we wouldn't have started ours if it wasn't for that and our experience there. And then on top of it, um, um, Texas Rob, we call him Texas Rob because there's two Robs on the e-board, but Texas Rob and the Alamo Fools hosted the Rosecrans Symposium down in San Antonio, which was phenomenal. I enjoyed it again. And so we are out there, and I think the key is that we need to continue to be out there, and we need to try to connect people with um, programs like peer support. So I guess Danny and I have already spoke a little bit, but just some closing comments here as we wrap up. Bob, you any last words?
No, overall, thanks. Thanks again, Robbie and Dan, putting it together. I think it was a good opportunity for us as a board to get together and discuss something that we've made important as the international, as an organization, that we want to pursue and make sure we provide those resources and support for our people.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, Ben, and you want to give some final words there?
Yeah, I just think we are making an impact among our membership. I think people are very aware of our stance on behavioral health, and that they can at least come to us to find some support, and that we should not be lax, and take it very seriously and stay on top of that leading edge, making sure our membership, and therefore our membership, is among the rest of the nation of firefighters, and we just work our way, as Dan said, one step at a time into that group of people.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. Chris?
I just want to tag on to, since you brought up the little note that I made on there, that it's okay to not be okay. The little part after the hyphen is just as important for today. And I think that's ties really good into Dan's comment about swerving off the road. It's all right to not feel good one day, to not be yourself. Get some rest, find somebody to talk to, and don't let those feelings linger day after day. But it's okay. You need to be able to say that to yourself. And thanks for having us. And this has been I don't know. I always like to say it's a lot of fun. This isn't really a fun topic, but it's always fun getting together with the brotherhood and with our like-minded folks. Thanks.
Totally agree, Chris. Danny, you want to close us out?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you guys honestly for what you have done for the fire service. It takes people like you to be leaders, to take on new tasks, and I'm sure that you sat there as an e-board when Richie came back and you guys discussed this and threw it around to find out, well, hey, is this the mission of the Fools? And it's okay. It's kind of like our program in regards to Florian. It started out as firefighter and EMS, and now it's all first responders and military. But so we have to grow. We have to grow with the changes and understand that what how big is that mission. Um, One question I have for you guys before I kind of sign off is, like we talked about, it's about accessibility. I'm sure anybody could call any one of you guys. One thing that I get all the time is, hey, I don't want to bother you. Are you kidding me? Really? Um, who do they call? Who do they call if somebody's sitting listening to this or out there? Do they call any one of you? They go to the website, or what do they do? Rob?
I was like, Rob, go ahead and answer that one. First thing, one of the things that I've learned as a peer support member in a smaller organization where everybody knows everyone, it's very difficult for people to reach out to people that know them personally, know their family. It's somewhat challenging. So the first thing I would say, or what we're learning, is kind of being more aware of the environment and kind of the what is going on around us, because it's not always likely that they're willing to reach out as much as if we can see that something's happening, it's easier if we reach out to them. And in a larger organization like the Fools with 7,000 members, it's extremely difficult. We can't keep kind of a barometer on what's going on all around the country, but we have a general idea. So I know I'm not really answering your question because we don't necessarily have a hey, call Rob Fisher or call Ben Flegel. I think the biggest thing is, we do have Rosecrance on our website, and so that links to professionals that could help out. But I think more it's upon us as an organization to kind of keep an eye on each other and step in so that they don't have to reach out to us, that we're actually reaching them before it's too late. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
I think it's important that we remain very visible and very approachable to the membership because of what the problems that you just described with such a large organization. There is no reason why a member in the middle of nowhere can't get a hold of an e-board member who's also in the middle of nowhere and get a conversation going. And I've got the contacts. Um, we have to be personable as an e-board and encourage our our closest contacts with the chapter presidents to also generate that kind of persona so that people can easily go, I do know who can help you. I do know who can help me, and know that they're not going to be ashamed and made to feel like they're lesser folks, weaker members of the service, just because they dared to call us and talk about this. Um, the guy I mentioned the other day, he said, I've never told anybody else how I feel. And he was laying it all out to me because he knew he could trust me. And I think it's important that that's what we're doing in light of the organizational difficulties that we have. Also, we can get Facebook and Instagram are things that people see regularly, and we can take advantage of that too and keep a conversation going. I think that's important as well.
Well, this is going to make a difference. Honestly, obviously, again, I told you that thanks to Bobby giving us this vehicle to get out there and for you guys to agree to spend, some of your time with us, and for whoever's listening, that you guys can call me anytime. Rob, I know you had a last comment on this, and I'll close it out.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things that I learned. I know we're looking for. And there's various. You can call the National Suicide Hotline, which doesn't necessarily, from everything we were talking about, you're going to get a general clinician or somebody. But one thing I learned at the symposium was texting badge, common spelling on badge, to 741-741, and then somebody's going to contact you. That is a first responder or a military person. Should you be having trouble, and that's one that I hadn't even seen before, and I looked it up online, and yeah, just so badge to 741-741 would be another opportunity to reach out to somebody, or if you're having problems. So that's it. Thanks, Danny.
Well, great. Thanks, guys. Chris, Ben, Rob, Bob, the whole executive board, for supporting firefighter behavioral health and what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're going to do forward. What I challenge you and all chapters and all firefighters and EMS that listen to this is, how do we stay in front of this? How do what do we need to do? And I'm not going to give you the answer, but what do we need to do to make this a standard? I don't have the answer to it. We're all doing our part. People always ask me in regards to what's the best training, what do I get for a certification, what's the best model, and really, Rob, we've talked about this and we've done training. Is that what the model that works for Chicago may not work for Snohomish, and certainly nobody's going to do the New York model because it's totally different. But certainly collaborating, discussing, and taking information from everybody else. It's like an instructor. You have to instruct the way you are. You can't do somebody else. It doesn't look good. So do what you need to do for your organization, but let's have the resources available. And honestly, I hope no one has to come into inpatient treatment. I know I'm jumping a little bit from training, but and peer support, but to treatment. But the only way we're going to be able to do that is through through your vehicle of training and awareness, and making sure that we have an understanding about where we're going to be in 5 or 10 years. Because if we just talk about this and don't do anything, people in 15 or 25 years are going to be like, what the hell did my dad or my uncle or one of the people before us do? Guys, thank you. Fire engineering world, thank you. Bobby Halton, thanks. He was actually filming, so he couldn't make it. We'll see you guys in the next 5th Wednesday of whatever month that is. I'm not exactly sure when it is, but thanks for joining us. Rob, thank you for helping out and co-hosting, or actually leading this one.
Thanks, everybody. And if you guys got anything that you want to have us talk about, feel free to reach out to Danny or myself. I think all of our contact information, or at least Danny's contact information, is out there. And I always enjoy, as it was said earlier, I always enjoy spending time with my good brothers and chat.
Yeah, I was thinking about having James Gearing from Behind the Shield or Birdman from Sons of the Flag on next time. So we'll see what about their availability.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everybody. I got to go to work.